Similar to what Krishnan said, the segments about the lower income and the middle and the upper and the ultra HNIs. But in our experience, what we have seen, what has changed a lot is this mass affluent segment, which seems to have grown very rapidly. If I were to look at, 30 years ago, majorly you would have NRIs either in the blue collar space or people who were establishing businesses, and you would not have that many in the corporate world who are building the kind of wealth that the corporate world is building today. If I were to just do a simple comparison of, say, Big Fours, people working in the Big Fours here compared to India, the big difference is their ability to be able to save more, because the base salary itself is so much higher. It's double, if you look at it, for a senior manager in a Big Four in India compared to the UAE. Their base salary itself is double, and then they have, India, you have taxes that you have to pay. Here, you're getting tax-free. So for us, what we have seen is that monthly saving potential of this mass affluent segment is far greater than that what is of India, and that's something that has been definitely our focus at Anand Rathi. So I'll also just go back a little bit to the lower segment as well, because you talked about the base. So the base is something that is looking at gold, because something that is physical that they can get. So I'm talking about the blue collar domestic workers, etc. Right? If they have any kind of saving that they end up making, they want to buy gold because something that I want for easy access, because their rainy day can be something which is very, adverse, and they need to have access to it. Then you have one segment, which is the next, which would be the middle, which is, as Krishnan very rightly pointed out, more in the child and education, retirement planning. Their objective is first to make their dear to life objectives, that the way we call it, children's education, retirement, that's what they want to achieve. Now the mass affluent, that is the one that is trying to do wealth creation. For them, guidance is what is very important. Somebody that they are smart, they are willing to understand, seek the guidance because they don't really have the time. But if they are misguided, they're very also easy to, for them to move on to somewhere else. The HNI, UHNI segment is very, very well catered to here, with a whole host of different products, whole host of different banks, everything that's there. But in our experience, I think what they really want is a holistic wealth management solution, which is not just talking about creation, but also talking about preservation, also talking about tax planning, also talking about, multi-country migration if they need to be able to move assets from one place to the other, having access to that money. Those things play a very, very big role rather than just what product that they are actually buying. And therefore, in our experience, having a wealth goal or a objective-led wealth management solution, which is what we focus on, 14% kind of a target return, factoring in there will be depreciation, and then dividing it and doing it with simple things, just 2 products, that's all. That is what has really worked to help that segment.
I want to stay with you. When we talk about global products, you have the entire choices here.
Yes.
So how knowledgeable is the market? How mature is the market here? I'm talking from an investor's perspective. I'm not talking about the people like you who deliver these products.
I think that knowledge levels have really evolved with time. I've been here now 10 years. In the early years, every time that we would meet people, the HNI, UHNI segment was still very well aware, knew what it is that they want to do. If somebody is trying to, misguide them, they would know. But again, the mass affluent was quite unaware. And as I said, they go with the guidance, so they went with whatever that the advisors were kind of telling them. But that knowledge level has evolved a lot. Today, it is very difficult to they will ask a lot of the questions. I think also the awareness that has been spread through social media, they ask questions about brokerage, they ask questions about expenses. They want to see that, hey, if you are doing this for me, then what is the value that you're bringing, and not just filling, your bucket first and not thinking about me. So definitely the knowledge levels have increased with time. But again, as I said, the HNI, UHNI segment, they had access to this knowledge as well. Also, they have a little bit more time on their hands. They are in established maybe businesses. So they do a lot of their investing themselves as well. So that also helps them to build that confidence towards that knowledge. But
are they making the right choices? Are they making the right decisions when they're doing it by themselves?
Yes, yes, there are, very much. I think that in the a higher segment, they want that, and again, the second generation, a lot of the second generation where they don't have that much of connection from India, they want to do fancier things. They want to explore in crypto. They want to explore into doing stock trading themselves, because their risk appetite is a little bit higher. Why? Because, your safety, your money is taken care of. As in, maybe the first generation is already got enough corpus where they're doing something which is more risk-adjusted return. So maybe the second generation. So again, I think their appetite to explore more things, or they ask us for a lot more. We do very simple things, 2 things, but they want more from us.
We are sitting in a city which is a global hub of products, this thing. A lot of global trends impact perceptions. They impact not only the perceptions, the actual value of different opportunities here. So take me through, how does a perception about like say interest rates or currency exchange, how does that work out in this particular market? Is there a flight to safety, say, to dollars when there is a conflict, particularly if it's somewhere close in the neighborhood?
Definitely, I think these are the 2 big factors that affect, especially investments back in India. Since we are India specialists, we kind of deal with this almost on a day in and day out basis. But I think what ends up happening is that it's not a one-time thing that can help to convince. It's over the years that you keep showing investors data and keep bringing them back to what is your long-term objective. If your objective of your investment is that you're going to keep it for like that 5-year period, then if we give an explanation as to why that has happened, for example, like right now, the last 2-3 weeks have been not so good for the currency, right? But then when you go back and you explain as to why that has happened, and then also that the previous 2 years it's not really moved, and you keep inculcating the fact that currency depreciation is not something which is linearly going to keep happening, and you keep factoring that in, that you have to build that buffer of that 3.5%, then they actually don't ask those questions, or they don't get affected by it as much, because they have been able to make their peace with the fact that this is it. Also, it comes to the wealth planners. So for us, if we know that this is money that they're going to need, most HNIs and UHNIs, if they need money, most of their expenses are quite planned. So if you have a big ticket expense that is coming in, in the next 1 year or so, we plan it like that we're not going to let it go on that risk of how the currency may move in a 1-year period, because we can't predict how it's going to move in a 1-year period. So we plan it like that. Again, at Anand Rathi Wealth, we really are objective based. We're not like a lot of the, we're not just wanting to provide products or solutions, and we're trying to distinguish between wants and needs of clients, and we let data do the talking. So when it comes to, when we look at the G20 numbers of returns of the equity markets on every single time frame, whether it is 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, India has been the top performer when it comes to returns, right? So, and because of that, and our focus is asset allocation, whatever is the asset allocation that we want to do where you have to put your money into growth assets, we believe that that needs to go to India. Because as even Pratibha very rightly mentioned, the kind of risk-adjusted return that one can get in India is not possible in anywhere else in the world. And therefore, if the objective of the client is to make that 14% risk-adjusted return at a risk which is 50% lesser than that of the Nifty, and we actually did this risk adjustment against the S&P 500 as well, and we are 75%, the portfolio that Anand Rathi manages, it's just made of 2 products, and those 2 products, simple things, gives you 14% return over long periods of time at a risk which is 75% lesser than that of the S&P 500. So if the focus is that, then we have seen several of our NRI customers having almost 90% of their allocation to India. Is there a pushback? Yes, there is. The pushback is, again, connected to the deep-rooted connections to India, and then addressing the cobwebs. You know, again, Krishnamurthy sir very, very rightly talked about that you amplify the risks. Jeff Bezos talked about amplifying the risks and minimizing the opportunities. That is 90% of the battle that we fight. People talk about currency. People talk about convertibility. We have the highest dollar reserves today than we have ever had. So convertibility is not an issue. When it comes to currency depreciation, if it has been 3.5%, you've also got 14-15%. So even if you cut that down, that's still 11%. 11% compounded over 10 years is massive. So yes, we do get a pushback from certain segments that you don't provide USD, you don't provide this, but I think we are very true to our core that this is what we provide, and if this is a solution that doesn't work for you, there are other players that can provide that for you.
Today has been reserved for GIFT City, but how do you as advisors, distributors, feel about GIFT City? What are the opportunities that it opens up?
I think GIFT City has opened up a very, very big opportunity for the NRIs to invest into India. There are, I think, close to about 300, setups already that's there. I think about 100 AMCs have already started their offices over there. So it does become a big avenue for NRI investors to invest into India without worrying about taxation, without worrying about conversion. So those cobwebs that one has, those can get dismissed. I think since it is still in the nascent stage, it needs to be popularized a little bit more. We need to learn more about it to actually understand its full potential, but definitely it has a very large potential. And we ourselves are also very much exploring that option.
What would be your advice to someone who wants to set up a business now in Dubai, which is catering to the NRI market? Yeah. What could he or she do now, which is substantially different? What differentiated offering do you think they could to create an impact in this market?
I think segmenting the market and understanding which segment it is that you want to cater to, and provide a solution that caters to the issues of that segment, stick to that. Because there are enough players out there that are providing a platter of products or platter of things, different options that are there. But what at least worked for us and what has been working for us, that we stick to what it is that we've been doing, and we've been growing very rapidly. And we still do see many gaps in the market of certain segments not being able to, being served as much, information not being passed on the way that they want to hear it out to. So I think that would be, to really understand which class it is that we are catering to and what it is that we want to provide as a solution to them, and stick to that core irrespective.